The first time I saw her, she was running beside a moving train with fear in her eyes and sunlight in her hair, clutching a small brown suitcase like it carried her whole life inside it. I was sitting by the window, lost in my own quiet sadness, when she jumped into the carriage just before the doors closed, looked straight at me, and said words that turned an ordinary afternoon into the most unforgettable 3 hours of my life. "Please don't ask questions," she whispered, breathless and shaking. "You re my husband for the next 3 hours." Before I could even understand what she meant, she sat down beside me, slipped her trembling hand through my arm, and forced a smile at the man who had entered the carriage behind her. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the strange ways life brings broken people together, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Ancient Truth, because sometimes one small act of compassion can change 2 lives forever. My name is Ayan Mir, and that day I was traveling from Rawalpindi to Lahore for a job interview I did not truly want. The train had left under a bright morning sky, and by noon, golden sunlight was pouring through the windows, spreading across the seats like warm honey. Outside, green fields rushed past, children waved from dusty paths, and vendors moved through the aisles selling tea, biscuits, and oranges. Everyone seemed to be going somewhere with purpose, except me. I had lost my father 6 months earlier, lost my confidence soon after, and was carrying a folder of certificates that felt heavier than stone. I had been the proud son once, the responsible one, the man who promised his mother everything would be fine. But inside, I felt empty, like a house where all the lights had gone out. The woman beside me could not have been more than 27. Her name, I later learned, was Meher Zaman. She wore a simple cream dress, a blue scarf around her shoulders, and a silver ring on her finger that looked more like protection than decoration. Her breathing was uneven, and though she tried to appear calm, her nails dug into my sleeve. Across the aisle, the man who had followed her stood near the luggage rack, pretending to check his phone while watching us from the corner of his eye. He was well-dressed, with polished shoes and a smile too sharp to be kind. Meher leaned closer and whispered that he was her cousin's friend, that her family had promised her to him without asking her heart, and that he had followed her after she ran away from an engagement meeting that morning. I should have been afraid. I should have moved away. I should have said this was not my problem. But something in her face stopped me. It was not drama, not cleverness, not a trick. It was the look of someone standing at the edge of a life they did not choose. So I placed my hand gently over hers and said, loud enough for the man to hear, that my wife had been nervous since morning because she hated crowded trains. The words felt strange in my mouth, but Meher's eyes filled with sudden relief. For the first time, her grip softened. The man came closer after a few minutes and asked Meher if everything was all right. His tone was polite, but his eyes were not. Meher lowered her gaze, and I felt her fear return. I looked up and told him she was fine, that we were traveling to Lahore to meet my mother, and that she needed rest. He stared at me, measuring me, trying to decide if I was real or just a wall placed in his path. Then he smiled and said he had mistaken her for someone else. But he did not leave. He sat 2 rows behind us, close enough to remind her that the past had not given up. For the next hour, we played the roles life had suddenly handed us. I called her Meher because I had heard the ticket checker say it from her ticket. She called me Ayan after glancing at my interview folder. We spoke softly like real travelers, sharing small details, building a believable story out of nothing. She said we had been married for 5 months. I said my mother still complained that she made tea too strong. She almost laughed at that, and the sound was so unexpected that it brightened the whole carriage. Outside, the day grew clearer, fields turning into small towns, towns into crowded crossings, and every station bringing new faces and fresh noise. Slowly, the truth came out. Meher was a schoolteacher who wanted to continue teaching girls in her village. Her father had died when she was young, and her uncle had taken control of everything, including her choices. The man behind us, Saif, was wealthy, connected, and cruel in quiet ways. He had not touched her, but he had already begun speaking about her life as if she were furniture being moved into his house. That morning, when she heard him tell her uncle that teaching was unnecessary for a married woman, something inside her broke. She took her suitcase, left through the back gate, and ran to the station with only one plan: get to Lahore, reach an old professor who had once offered her help, and start again. Listening to her, I felt my own pain become smaller, not because it disappeared, but because her courage made my sadness feel less lonely. I told her about my father, about how he had sold his watch to pay my university fees, about how I had promised to become someone worthy of his sacrifices. I told her how after his death, I stopped believing in myself. Meher listened without interrupting, and when I finished, she said that grief was not proof of weakness, but proof that love had once been strong enough to leave a shadow. I looked out the window so she would not see my eyes filling with tears. Near the second hour, Saif made his move. He stood up as the train slowed near a small station and came toward us with 2 railway guards. He told them Meher was unstable, that she had run from home, and that he was responsible for taking her back. My chest tightened. Meher went pale. The guard asked for proof that we were married. For one terrible moment, everything went silent except the metal rhythm of the train. I had no proof. No photos, no documents, no real history. Just a terrified woman beside me and a lie that had become the only shield she had. Then Meher did something brave. She stood, though her hands shook, and spoke with a voice that cracked but did not fall apart. She told the guards she was an adult, that she was not traveling with Saif, and that she wanted him kept away from her. Passengers began turning toward us. An elderly woman sitting nearby spoke up and said she had seen Meher afraid since the man entered. A tea seller said the same. Then I showed the guards my ID and said I would accompany Meher to the women's help desk at Lahore station if needed. The older guard looked at Saif, then at Meher, and something in his face softened. He told Saif to return to his seat and warned him not to disturb her again. When the guards left, Meher sat down slowly, as if her bones had forgotten how to hold her. She did not cry loudly. Tears simply rolled down her face while sunlight touched her cheeks. I offered her my handkerchief, and she held it like it was something precious. For the first time, she said thank you not for pretending to be her husband, but for seeing her as a person when everyone else saw her as a decision to be made. The final hour of the journey felt different. The fear was still there, but hope had entered the carriage quietly and taken a seat beside us. We spoke of ordinary things, as people do when they have survived something extraordinary. She told me about the girls in her class who wrote poems in the margins of their notebooks. I told her about my mother's habit of feeding every guest until they surrendered. Meher smiled more easily now. At one point, she looked at my interview folder and said I should go, not because I wanted the job, but because my father's dream deserved a chance to meet the man I was becoming. Her words landed somewhere deep in me, where I had locked away my courage. When the train finally reached Lahore in the bright afternoon, the platform was alive with noise, luggage, announcements, families, and steam rising from food stalls. Saif stepped off quickly and disappeared into the crowd after seeing the guards near our carriage. Meher and I walked together to the help desk, where she called her old professor, Dr. Samina Rauf, who arrived within 20 minutes with worry on her face and strength in her voice. Before leaving, Meher turned to me. For 3 hours, we had been strangers pretending to share a life. But in that moment, it felt like we had carried each other across a bridge neither of us could have crossed alone. She removed the silver ring from her finger and placed it in her suitcase, as if closing a door. Then she looked at me and said that some people enter your life as shelter, not chains. I told her she had done the same for me. She smiled, and for the first time since she had boarded the train, there was no fear in it. I went to my interview that afternoon with dust on my shoes, a wrinkled shirt, and a heart that was strangely steady. I did not know if I would get the job, but I spoke honestly. I told them about responsibility, pressure, and how people do their best work when they are trusted, not controlled. 2 weeks later, I received the appointment letter. My mother cried when I showed it to her. I cried too, but this time, the tears did not feel like defeat. Months passed. One morning, a letter arrived at my home. Inside was a photograph of a small classroom in Lahore. On the blackboard were the words, "A woman's life belongs to her courage." Meher had started teaching again. At the bottom of the letter, she wrote that she was safe, that she was free, and that she hoped I had kept my promise to become the man my father believed I could be. I folded the letter carefully and placed it beside my father's old watch. Years later, I still think about that train ride whenever life feels impossible. I think about a woman who ran toward freedom with nothing but a suitcase and trembling hands. I think about how kindness does not always arrive as grand sacrifice. Sometimes it is simply staying seated beside someone when fear tells them they are alone. Sometimes it is lending your name, your courage, your voice, for just 3 hours, long enough for someone to find their own. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Ancient Truth for more emotional stories about kindness, courage, and second chances. Special request: comment kindness can save a life if you believe one good person can change someone's entire future. That day, Meher did not really need a husband. She needed a witness, a friend, and a stranger brave enough to stand between her and the life being forced on her. And I did not really need a job interview. I needed to remember that even broken people can still become someone else's shelter. The train only took 3 hours to reach Lahore, but in those 3 hours, 2 lost souls learned something that would last forever. Sometimes destiny sits beside you in daylight, breathless and afraid, and asks you to be kind before it asks you to understand.